Okay, hello again, hello again. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Stafford Media Channel. And in today's episode, we are going to edit an interview. If you recall, I recently gave you an assignment in which you guys are going to do a news segment. All right, so you need to go and number one, you're going to find a good story that's very newsworthy. There's lots of newsworthy stuff out there right now. So you certainly can do that. In terms of just find something that's interesting to you. Because really the news, if you turn on the news at night, the news is more than just somebody sitting there reading a script, right? And there's that, and they're reading off a teleprompter. But what makes the news personal are the stories. Like, in other words, if you watch ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, yes, he's reading that teleprompter, and he's talking about, oh my gosh, we just passed 4 million. This is as of end of July here. We just passed 4 million people who've had COVID or have COVID. But what makes the news important is where you go and you talk to those people who've been impacted by that. In other words, maybe we could talk to one of the nurses working on the front lines, or maybe somebody working in a meat packing plant, or somebody who's lost their job. All, terrifying things. And news doesn't have to be terrifying. It can also be good news too, like you saw in some of the examples that I showed you. But we want to make these stories real. So think of something that's interesting to you, something like how COVID has impacted education. So that's what I interviewed, or how I did my interview, and I interviewed Coach Carey. So let's get to it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. I'll open Premiere first. And while that's opening, I will open this folder right here and show you. I made our file hierarchy. That's hard to say. File hierarchy already. And I'll kind of go over it one more time. You remember in our basic shots, I showed you that whole file hierarchy. I made a new folder, and the way you do that again is right click. And in the subsequent lessons after this, I'm not going to be showing you all the stuff over again, because if you go, hey, how do you do that again? I'm going to say, go back and watch the video. That's the reason why I'm spending a lot of time doing these videos. And so you just go to File, New, Folder. So that's what I did. So here's the hierarchy one more time. It's news segment number 1, a Zoom interview. Click, and there's 3 folders: assets, exports, and projects. So I go click inside of the assets folder, and you'll notice there's some things in here. So I'd already copied in some stills from sports last year, because this interview is going to be on sports. Okay. And then I also copied in the Coach Carey interview. Okay. So if you want to know how to import, go back and watch the video. So all that's in here already. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And Premiere had opened this up, so I'm going to go ahead and start a new project. And I'm going to call it news segment number 1. You're going to do multiple news segments throughout the year. In fact, we do this all year long, and it's just a great way of us telling our story. If you were at Hoover last year, you remember how we did TMH. Well, this is how we did them. We created news segments then that ran on TMH. Now, TMH is going to be different this year for sure. All right, but we're still going to do these news segments, and we're still going to do TMH. It's just going to look different, and we'll get to that later. I'll do yet another Zoom on that. And so here we go, news segment, if you remember, and it says, well, where are you saving this at? So I'm at my location here, browse, and I'm going to tell it, go in the video folder, go in the news segment number 1, and this is my project, so I'm going to put it in a project folder. I select that folder. Remember, I told you, just leave all this alone right now, because we're going to let Premiere change that for us. It's thinking, and here we go with our 4 panes here. Let's go ahead and get started importing. And it says, well, where are all your assets at? And they're in the video folder. They're in the news segment. They're in the asset folder. And I have 1 in footage right now. Oops, let me go backwards. I have 1 in footage right now. And it's not bringing that one in yet, so I'm going to work on that here. In fact, I'm going to pause. All right, sorry for that delay there. Actually, it's kind of a good thing again. I had a little bit of problems importing, and I didn't want you to sit there and figure out what the problem was with it. Whenever I brought the clip in, it for whatever reason wouldn't load certain type of clip. Now I did my interview using this computer right here on basically in Zoom. And so you're going to be doing the same kind of thing with this. Basically, it's a Zoom interview news segment. And again, I watched a news story last night, and sure enough, they were doing the exact same thing. So it's a pretty regular thing. So let me go ahead and show you what I did. I double clicked, and it's saying, well, where's your footage at? So I'm going to say it's in the news segment number 1. It's in my assets. It's in my footage folder. And hey, there it is. So it was my bad. I brought the wrong one over, and you can see it says Zoom right there. All right, so I have that brought in. Let's go ahead and bring in some more things too. And I'm gonna click right here. This is all my importing here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in new segment number 1. I'm gonna bring in assets, and I'm gonna bring in some stills too. Click open. I grabbed some stills that we shot last year for the yearbook. And so you're gonna want B-roll for this. A-roll is basically like what I'm doing right here, the primary source information. So like in this case, my interview. But B-roll helps to tell your story, and it's necessary for everything that we do. You see it in movies, you see it in the news, everything. Every time you see video or film, people are using B-roll, and it's just a way of just knitting your story together, if you will. I brought in a bunch of stuff now, but it's all over in here. It's kind of cool to leave this all basically so we can organize. It's all a mess right now. I'm going to say stills. And so anything that says JPEG on it, that's a type of file format for still photography. All right, so I'll put all my stills in one folder. Remember what I said, organization is key. And you'll notice they didn't go away. They're just hiding in that bin. The bin's just a folder. It's another name for a folder. And I'll make another bin, and I'll say footage. And I'm gonna grab everything other than that Zoom interview, and I'll go ahead and take all that, and then I will just drag it into there. Now, if you had a Mac, we don't have access to Macs, but Macs will actually bring in and recognize a whole folder as it brings it in. It makes it a little easier. All right, so before we even start looking at this, let's go ahead and make a new sequence. So I'm going to say File, New, Sequence. And if you remember what I did last time, hey, look, it still left that exact same window open there. That'll drop down. It says digital SLR, and we're doing digital SLR 1080p at 30 frames a second. American television is 30 frames a second. And you can actually put a sequence name on it, and I will call this news segment number 1. And click OK. And now at this point in that, here it is right here, you notice that now my timeline has changed to that thing saying news segment. What I'm going to do with this now, this says Zoom right here. I'm actually going to take this. I can either put it in here, or you know what I could also do? I can also double click it, and I can just look at it right in here. Here I am. Now, here's where I will edit this for you, because this interview is 14 and a half minutes long. It's actually 14 minutes, 32 seconds, and 10 frames. That's what all that means right there. Now, if your homework tonight, watch the news, all right, just so you can get an idea of, hey, how do they weave the story together, all right? So watch some of these so you kind of know what you're doing with this. But they're never 14 and a half minutes long. That would be the majority of the news broadcast for one story, and it's never that. In this case, think like a couple minutes, 1 to 2 minutes. Anthony Bailey, one of my good friends, Hoover grad, who is the weatherman for Channel 47. He says whenever we sit down and think about our stories and then we put our stories together, he said most of their stories are like, a minute or two long, because people's attention spans aren't that long. They're not going to sit and watch the whole thing. And so editing is key, ladies and gentlemen. Editing is key. So you want to find what are the best parts of your interview and your story. Now, if you remember when I showed you the PowerPoint, it basically said you can either leave the interviewers, that's me, the interviewers questions in there, or you can actually edit them out possibly. Now, as you're looking at the screen here in my source monitor, you'll see that I'm actually in there for the whole shot. So it probably would make sense to leave me in there. But there's other times, especially whenever we get back to school, or probably with the next assignment, because you're going to do this again, you're just going to do a variation on it for the next project. I'll actually show you how you do an in-person, face-to-face interview. We're going to be safe about this. We're going to be super safe about this. You're either going to be masked up, and you're definitely not going to get anywhere closer than 10 feet away from the person that you're talking to. And you can even, choose family members if you want to. Tell me about how, work has affected your family. And so I'll show you how you can ask the questions and then later edit out your questions. So that's what we're doing next. But let's get back to this project here. You'll see that here's me and Coach Carey. In case you don't know, Coach Carey is our athletic director at Hoover High School. He's in charge of all of the sports and all that. So if we go ahead and look at this.
All right. Please state your name and what you do at Hoover.
I'm Tim Carey. I'm the athletic director at Hoover High School.
Okay. We have a few questions, Coach Carey, in regards to athletics right now. So here you go. COVID's changed everything. What has been the impact of sports at Hoover High School?
It was a huge impact for us to end the spring the way we did. We had teams on that Thursday before we shut down on March 12th. We had boys volleyball was at the coast ready to play in a tournament. Baseball was on a bus heading up to Minarets, and we had.
So you see, as I asked that question, which he answered it appropriately, but he answered it about the spring, right? Because that was kind of the first big impact whenever we had to close down schools, and you remember from last year, of course you remember. But I want to know, what is COVID doing for this coming school year? And so I will probably edit out that whole part. And he actually gives, we've interviewed him before for TMH. He gives really good answers. You'll look for the difference between an open-ended and a closed-ended answer, an open-ended, closed-ended question. Like the way not to ask questions when you're interviewing is, who's your favorite football team? Somebody's going to say, well, Raiders. Or definitely, who's your favorite baseball team? The Giants. That's the only baseball team. But so they're going to say something like that. But a better way to ask it would be, who's your favorite baseball team and why? Because then they can say the Giants, and they can give all the reasons about those 3 rings they won, in 5 years and all that good stuff. That's the difference between open-ended and closed-ended answers and questions. So he gave really good answers, but it's really long. Like I said, it's a 15-minute interview almost. And so we don't want that. So what I would do is I'm going to find just the good parts. And I'm not going to actually make you guys sit here and watch 15 minutes of me editing this. What I will do is I'm going to just go through and grab the parts. And I'm going to do that I'm going to listen to the whole interview again and say, what are the good parts? What is going to help me tell my story? Because I'm shooting for a story. That's what this is called. It's a news segment, but it's basically a news story on athletics and COVID-19. And so I want to do that story. And I basically want to find what are the best answers that he gave that help to weave my narrative together. The narrative is your storyline, okay? And so that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to actually pause here, and then I'll come back, and you can kind of see, what am I basically doing? I'm going to sit here and watch it. Like, let's pretend it was right here where I like this. I'm going to go and then I'm going to go like I'm listening. Oh, and that's the best parts. And then I'm going to click that and drag that into there. I'll find one at the end, and then I'll show you. But I'm going to actually turn these off, and I'm going to listen to this. And then you'll see in my timeline that I have a bunch of, just a story that's, a couple minutes long. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to pause here. All right, hello, and we are back. Sorry for that delay. Actually, it wasn't a delay for you because I just edited it out. I went ahead and finished cutting that interview. I listened to it. Remember, it's a 14.5-minute interview. So obviously too long for a news broadcast. And I edited it down to a 3-minute and 12-second and 6-frame interview. And by the way, whenever you look at my screen right here, when I see this here, this is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Remember, there's 30 frames in a second. So this basically says 0 hours, 14 minutes, 32 seconds, and 10 frames. So I edited it down to basically a little more than 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. However, that's a little longer than I would like for them to be. But because of the fact that it's essential information, and whenever you watch this, you'll see what I'm talking about, because it really is about. And I'll put the final interview, by the way, online so you guys can actually see it. But it's such good information that Coach Carey's giving that is honestly gonna. It's pertinent to a lot of you guys. Anybody who plays sports, you're gonna want to know this information. So I took it and edited it down. So let's go ahead and watch it for a minute. And what did I do, by the way? How did I get to that point? Let's go ahead and take a look here. So I put it up into my source pane. So let me click here. If you remember, let's go to our project window. How did I do that? I took the zoom interview, whoosh, clicked it, and I drug it up there, or double click. So if I clicked it, click, it was right there. So I listened to it. I listened to the whole thing, but I didn't want you guys to sit and watch 14 and a half minutes. So I listened to the whole thing like this.
In session, but not being in person puts a damper on it. And pretty much at that point, we knew we weren't coming back.
So you'll notice how there's this little green thing right here, and this is right where I pipe in and scratch the top of my head here. What did I do there? I put markers in here. So if you go to marker and add marker, or you can just hit the letter M on your keyboard, and it adds a marker. A marker doesn't show on television. It's just a way of saying, look here. All right, so every time I asked another question, I went ahead and dropped a marker.
Moving ahead into into this fall semester, describe what the CIF changes are. What's that going to look like for this year?
So basically,
So that's what I did. So I went to the markers then, and whenever I listened to. So I backed up just a little bit, and by the way, you're going to learn these keys here right now in this lesson. So I can take my arrows and roll backwards. I'm going backwards. And I'm not asking it right there. I was right about it. I wish I would have put my hand up on my head. He was actually giving a really long answer, and I was kind of like trying to, stop for a second, coach. But what I did then was I put I, that's my end point. If you forget that, it's right there. Mark I. Actually, I missed it a little bit. Let me go back and do it again. Because I don't want to get myself right in the middle of saying something. How about right there? I, boom.
Moving ahead into
better.
Into this fall semester, describe what the CIF changes are. What's that going to look like for this year?
So basically, we've had.
So I'll let him go ahead and answer here. I already have it down here.
Spring, forever. And they all have a slight overlap. Well, the CIF went through.
So we'll pretend I got all the way to the end. I found out where it was at the end. I listened to the whole thing.
All fall sports got moved.
And here's another way to let you speed up. The J, K, and L keys are magical when it comes to editing in Adobe Premiere. Here's what they do. You'll notice I was doing all this by essentially clicking and hitting the space bar. The space bar is a good one too. That starts and stops. Starts and stops. However, if you want to learn to go faster, you learn the J, K, and L keys. The L plays.
Winter weather.
Hit it twice.
It's a statewide thing, so in some parts of the state,
now it's twice as fast.
Some you can't. We can get by with it, but they chose to put it in the spring. Which throws a damper on tennis and golf because many places they have one.
Hit it one more time. It's even faster. Now he sounds like Mickey Mouse when he does that, but I'm just simply looking for, here's kind of where his answer ends at. So then I can, let me hit L again.
They have to practice there and
see how I gave long answers.
Golf.
And I go,
same thing. Some schools have
wait a minute. If I hit the J key, now it's backing up. Double J, twice as fast, and I could stop right on the K. So I can learn to edit just with 3 fingers.
You have 8 chords, some only have 6 in the eye.
So we'll pretend the end is right there, because I don't want to take time to find that end, but that's what I did during that pause. I edited all this. You can see it's all in my timeline now. I edited it all, and I made myself a glass of iced tea, because that made me feel better. And so then I took all those pieces, and then once I found my endpoint, I did O, and then I took it, I'm going to pretend, and I took it and I drug it into the part of the timeline where I wanted. Okay? So just click and drag, and notice it's dragging in my audio and my video there. I'm going to go ahead and lasso that. So that's what I did all here. All right? You see it left those markers in place. They don't do anything now, but it was just telling me here's where they're at. So now I could sit and listen to this.
Tim Carey, I'm the
It's all
athletic
in
director
here.
at Hoover High School.
Considering the infectiousness of COVID-19, how can we...
Oh, did you just see that? Did you just notice how it went from like a regular size all the way down to a small size? Boom. What just happened? Well, Zoom records at a lower resolution than high def TV. That's basically what you're looking at. You're looking at not as many pixels. And if in normal times we would never want to do this, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to lose the resolution whenever I do this little cheat here. But with television right now, everybody's cheating a little bit on what they're doing. When I say cheating, they're using really low resolution images. I mean, everybody has these 4K TVs. Not everybody, but most people have either 1080p or 4K TVs, 5K TVs, and yet we're using things that are like a fraction of that resolution. And so sometimes it doesn't look very good. So it's not ideal. But what you're going to do is you're going to do this. You're actually going to go, let's look at this clip right here. I'm going to click in on this clip and then I'll zoom in on it. And also, I'm going to talk about this audio waveform in just a second. You can see all his voice right there. And so if I click on this clip right here, and I click up to the effect controls, you're going to notice that there's all these different settings in here. Now, what are effect controls? Effect controls are different ways of changing your clip. You know, you can move the position of it, you can move the scale, which is how big it is. We'll get to a lot of these things. I can make it rotate, and you can also, see this little tiny stopwatch right here? That basically is for putting keyframes in. What are keyframes? Keyframes are changes over time. Like if I wanted it to get bigger or smaller over time, I can click on that keyframe and do that. And you will be doing that both in Premiere and a program second semester called After Effects. And it's all about keyframing, animating, and changing things. And you'll basically do it. In fact, we'll do a little bit of it with the next assignment, I promise. We're going to put in something called lower thirds. And so I'll show you how to do that. Can't do too much in one assignment. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this. If I have this clicked, it means it's showing me what's happening up here. I change the scale to 150%. These are in percent. So I'm actually going to take that and I'll copy it. Because then when I go over to this next one, I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to show you how I can do all of these here. If I click to here, you see that the scale is only at 100%. Now I could actually take it and I can slide it up. Oops, let me put my cursor over it so you can actually see it. And I can slide it up. You'll see it's actually changing. It's getting bigger. It's getting smaller on my screen here. So I essentially want to take it, so I don't want to make it so it fills my screen, but I essentially want it to go edge to edge over here. So I found that if I typed 150, I typed that in on the keyboard there. Boom, there it is. But rather than taking the time to do that on all of my clips, I can actually do this. Boom, I'll click into that one, and I can actually paste it in. I don't think I copied it. Let me see if I can do this here. Copy all this here. And paste. And it did. It put that in there. And I'll click here and I will say paste. And so it's essentially pasting those attributes in. And whenever we do color grading on the next assignment, guess what? What's color grading? Color grading is changing the color and the contrast and white balance and all those things. You can actually do the same thing. We'll copy and paste all those. But again, I don't want to give you too much all at once. Pasting in all these attributes so this fills my screen. Like I said, not going to be as crisp as it was, but I like the fact that it's filling my space here. Okay? So let's, without listening to the whole thing again, because you see even this one answer is like a minute long.
Considering transportation issues, you want to talk about that?
Sure. I think everything we're trying to do with our kids.
So there we go. So I'm going to save this, by the way. I save every 5 minutes or so. It would be rather boring to sit and watch me and Coach Carey. I know we're exciting people, really. It would be kind of boring to sit and watch me and Coach Carey talk for all this time. And so your brain wants to see something else happening. And so how do you do that? We're going to add in our B-roll. So I'm going to go now back to here, and I promise we're going to get back to the audio down there. I'm going to go back to my project folder. I'm in my project folder already. And I am going to look where it says footage. And I am going to, if you remember, I had some other some footage that we shot at some football games from from last year. I wish we could do football like this again in the fall.
No gain on
That's what I love about. That's what I love about that.
the play.
Yeah, we don't put that in. At least not the audio. All right, so what we'll do is we'll find some places where, let me first of all, he's talking about football at some point. And again, for the purposes of time.
Form, they can fill it up. But we ask before they fill it up, they wash their hands. Fill it up.
There we go. He's talking about water. And so probably ideally I would want footage of them at practice. But, we don't have that right now. And so, if we just had this right here, let me just grab a minute of that just so it helps to tell that. Now, of course, I would sit and spend more time. I'm trying to go fast for class purposes here, but you would actually sit and watch your footage and find the best parts of it, okay? All right, that's pretty good. I and O, in and out. I'm simply going to, sometimes you might want the audio in there, but I'm just going to put the video in there. And so now, rather than sitting and watching me and Coach Carey talk.
They all have to bring their own water bottle. We do have water we provide for them. They can fill it.
That's probably a little short, but I can actually drag it out here or here too. So this is another way to edit, is I can drag out and get more of that clip right there.
When they come out, show it to practice, and when they leave, they all have to bring their own water bottle. We do have water we provide for them. They can fill it up.
See, that's pretty cool. Now, let me show you. And so whenever you're doing your story, you want to shoot lots of B-roll. You can never have too much B-roll. You can never have too much B-roll. Shoot lots of it. So if you're doing a story on, unemployment in the COVID area, shoot pictures of people who, maybe have jobs or who are looking for jobs, and, people in the unemployment line or something like that, just so it just tells that heart-wrenching story of people who are harmed by this whole nasty epidemic. So in any case, let me show you how to put stills in. So that was under footage. And now I'm going to go to stills. Okay, so let's see right here. We're going to want to go, let's kind of zoom through.
To the 3 questions that they have to answer,
Now, since I had to cut out so many of Coach Carey's, really long answers, just for the purposes of time, they were great answers just for the purposes of time. Let's watch right here at this transition.
check that they have to do every day, though.
Is there some place where people
See how there's a little jolt right there? It's just because our heads or our mouths aren't in the same position they were. It's oftentimes good to, I could put it right there.
Simple questions that say a self-check that they have to do every day, though.
is there some place where people can go?
Okay, check it out. Watch. I'm gonna I'll click here and let's look at. Let's see. There's a football one. Let's take a look and see. Oh, I know. I'm going to put this one in here. There's a spot where I asked the question.
I hadn't thought about putting that up there, but I will do that.
Will fans be allowed at the games?
That's a great question.
Check it out. I'm going to put this right there. So I'm going to take it and I will drop it and put it right there over that transition. So watch what happens.
Good suggestion. I hadn't thought about putting that up there, but I will do that.
Will fans be allowed at the games?
That's a
I might want it to be a little bit longer, but you're thinking, what's going on here? What's going on here is there's a lot more pixels in this image than there is with high-def television. Cameras, if they're set properly at a higher resolution, have a ton of pixels in them. They're basically, this is like beyond 4K. And so there's a lot of pixels in it. So what I need to actually do is I need to make it smaller. So let me click on this image here, and then I'm going to click on my effect controls. And I want to take my magic finger right here, and I stick it on the shift key. What does that do? That puts me to the first frame of my image. If you're looking right now on my computer, it is showing me that JPEG right there, I'm at the first frame of that image. Okay? Now I want to go to right here where it says scale. And so if I take that scale and I take it and slide it down, there we go. You can see how I can make it too small for there. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and there we go, right there. But let me play it now.
I hadn't thought about putting that up there, but I will do that.
Will fans be allowed at the games?
I'd probably take it and move it to the side a little bit, just so it's not quite there. And I'll zoom into it so I can really move it over. And I'll move it just a touch. And if you find you can't hardly move it, you can actually turn this thing called snapping off. Snapping is, see, that looks like a little magnet. It makes it so it's like magnetized to that. And if you can't move it enough, you just turn snapping off, and you can slide it and put it wherever you want. But the problem is you want to turn it right back on, because snapping is what keeps your audio and your video in sync. It's like when my lips are moving right now, you want to hear the words coming out at the same time. All right. So don't turn it off unless you have to. So now I'm going to click to that first frame right there, and then I am going to click on the keyframe right there. It says toggle animation, but it looks like a stopwatch. So I clicked on it. I take my magic index finger and I hold it down, and I go to the last frame. See the little triangle at the last frame there? This is actually the first frame of the next thing I'm looking at. I take my other index finger and I back up one frame, and now I can take this and I can zoom it in, so that way now we're showing the fan. So now watch this. This is called the Ken Burns effect, by the way. It's kind of a tip of the cap to someone named Ken Burns. Ken Burns. He's still alive, and very much active. He has done just wonderful, wonderful documentaries. He's just a great guy. Look him up. Ken Burns. You can see his stuff on PBS and stuff. So anyways, check it out.
But I will do that.
Will fans be allowed at the games?
That's a great question. If we do start back up,
is that a little long for you guys? If it's a little long now, you can actually take it and trim it a little bit. If you said, it's probably too much, so let me make it a little smaller. You can watch it again.
Will fans be allowed at the games?
That's a great question. If we do.
Okay, yeah, it's about right now. Yes, I would like for you guys to put stills in on this assignment. So that's how to put a still. Let me do one in the opposite direction just to show you that one, okay? Click like. Let me find another one. There's some more fans. Do I want to put something in sports? Let's see. There's, it's a pretty good one. If we wanted to put some cheer in there. Let's see. There's a water polo one right there. And there's a football. We already got football, so let's put in a water polo right there. Okay? Same thing. Except this time I will go in the opposite direction. And I would actually listen to this, but again, for the purpose of time, I'm just going to click and drag and put it right there. Make sure you're putting it, notice I'm dropping it into the V2 line. If you put it in the V1 line, it just got rid of me and Coach Carey. I'm actually putting it in the V2 line, so it is not getting rid of Coach Carey. Oops, that's kind of awkward. But we'll fix that. All right, so I click on it. And I am going to... let's change the scale a little bit. And you'll also notice it's kind of at a weird spot there. I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to move it down. And let's see, I will... I'll start zoomed in tight. Remember the other one, we kind of zoomed the opposite direction. And let's, oops, not quite yet, almost. Let's see, we have plenty of room over there. Yeah, we're going to go with that right there. I'm using something called the rule of thirds here, which is, we'll talk about it later, but it's basically a way of taking your subject right out of the center. So I'm going to move them over just a little bit more. I want to make sure that ball's in there. Now I'm going to take the position and the scale, and I'm keyframing them. Put my finger on the shift key, go all the way to the end, back up one frame. And if you need to zoom in a little bit so you can see it, you can do that. And now we want to zoom out. So I can just take this now and slide it out. And you'll also notice now that, hey, wait a minute, I'm losing the edge there. So I can take it and move it over, kind of like that. And now when you back up and watch it, there we go. It's me and Coach Carey.
Basic, simple questions. It's like a self-check that they have to do every day, though.
Is there some place where people can go to a store they can see all this? Like,
see how now if there was any kind of movement in my head or my position or my mouth or whatever, now you're not seeing it because I went from here's one question, here's the next question. All right, so I'm going to save this. And I would take the time. I wouldn't just put 3 in there. I would put, you don't want it to be constant, but I would put, probably 10 or more pictures. And you should know how to do it now because I put them in there. Shoot some footage, but you can also shoot some stills because your camera phone does both, and it does both well. All right, other things I would do is I would do a dip to black at the end.
Stay in shape, obviously the gyms aren't open.
All right, so I'll do that again. I put that on the last one, effects. And I'm gonna go video transitions. I am going to do dissolve and just a dip to black. So that way it fades out at the end.
Thank you very much.
I thanked him. You don't have to put that in there, but I thought it was
All right,
important.
Coach Carey, thank you for your time. Great answers all. So we'll get this out there.
I appreciate it, Stafford. Thank you very much. Go Pates.
Go Pates.
Go Pates indeed. All right, so let's get to this, my audio track now. So you see that I can actually see these lines. And if you can't see them, like if yours looks more like that, you can take this and pull it down, or you can also, when you're clicked in here, you can hit the Shift and the plus key, and it will move your tracks, make your tracks bigger. Shift minus will make them small. Shift plus will make them bigger. And so it's kind of helpful to do that because, and sometimes like if you don't need your video track anymore, I can make that one smaller because I think I got that all edited. I mostly want to worry about my audio tracks at this point. Your audio is your sound, either your music, your sound effects, or your dialogue. And so as I'm looking at this, I want it to be, whenever it goes out over the air, I want it to be between -6 and -12 decibels. People think minus means you can't hear it. No, you can hear it because 0 means, here's a little, I can move this over a little bit here. So you can see this. This is kind of like if you have a car stereo and has those little dancing VU meters. There it is right there. So if you look, you can see it dancing right there. All right, so you want it to be between -6 and -12. You can just see the -12 there. So -6 is halfway in there. In fact, if I probably did this, yeah, there you go. I pushed that up a little bit and made it smaller right here. You can now see -6 and -12. And so as I'm looking at it, it's not loud enough. I only go to 18. So how do I make the whole thing louder? Multiple ways to do it. I'm going to zoom into it. Easiest way is I can click in there and I can take this little line right here and push it up.
Athletic director.
I can push it up.
Hoover High School.
Okay, just kind of touching that right there.
Director at Hoover High School.
Okay, right at 12. That's good. So now I can turn this one up too. Same level. You can see how I can match that line right there. If it's easier for you, you can actually go to the audio clip mixer, and this looks like a soundboard here. We actually have a sound mixer in class whenever we start doing TMH. You'll get a chance to
Considering
use
the
it.
infectiousness of COVID-19, how can we ensure safety for our athletes and our coaches, considering huddles, considering transportation issues?
Take it and turn it up right there.
I think
I don't think I answered. 0 basically means I'm clipping my sound, meaning I'm distorting. So that's what that is. So you want to keep it to the -6 to -12.
everything we're trying to do
Which that's good right there. So I can take it and do this right here. All right. So I'm looking at it here. I want to just match that line all the way. Pay attention to your audio. Pay attention to your audio. Pay attention to your audio. Your audio is as important as your video. If your audio is all messed up, people can't even watch it. It's like, how many times you heard something that's like, oh, what's wrong with that audio? You just change channel. So let's make sure we get this right. Okay, so you don't want to be too quiet. You don't want to be too loud. I'm taking it and just turning it so that line matches all the way. The line matches all the way, and there we go. And so now when we listen to it, they should all sound about the same. But I'm not going to take the time to play this all with you guys right now. But you are going to listen to all of yours a couple of times.
I can go on and
Get it
look
right.
at it, and it's also something I haven't yet, but I'll upload it onto the Hoover website on the athletic page.
Now you notice I'm just touching 12, and that's okay, because it leaves a little headroom in case somebody goes, hey, which I do that in some of these recordings, you'll notice. And so it leaves a little, that's called headroom.
Page under the COVID-19.
I'll turn this up a
So I can
touch.
see the season of sport there. That's a good suggestion. I hadn't thought about putting that up there, but I will do that.
Okay. Will fans be allowed at the games?
That's a great question. If we do start back up in December, it is very possible we're going to start up.
So there we go. I'm going to save this. I'm going to pretend, and you're going to pretend with me, because again, I don't want these lectures to go on forever and ever and ever. I'm going to pretend that I added in some more stuff. You know, I put in some pictures of pictures of cheer. I have pictures of volleyball. I put all of those in, and I'll finish this up for you guys so you can see the whole thing. But I think I've spent enough of your time here. I'm going to try and not talk forever on these lectures, but I'm going to give you plenty of time to work, okay? So I hope you learned something here. I'm going to, again, save it, and when I finish it, I would go ahead and export it. But I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of those clips in, and I think I'll post it so you guys can see the finished interview, because it actually is some really good information, really. If you're an athlete, you want to know this stuff. So anyways, be safe, guys. Be well, and I'll see you on the next lecture, okay?